My dad abandoned me, then this happened. I was shocked. The air crackled with unspoken tension, a storm brewing on the horizon of my life. I was about to unearth a truth so buried, so meticulously concealed, that it would redefine everything I thought I knew about my family. For 10 years, my father had been a ghost, a phantom limb of my childhood, and now, he was back, carrying secrets that would shatter my world. What no contact with my dad for 10 years after he abandoned me and my mom, now he showed up to make me a soul. Mom was furious. If you accept his money, we're done. Those words still echo in my head, a grim foreshadowing of the chaos to come. My childhood, before that morning, was a sun-drenched meadow of happy memories. Giggling fits, bedtime stories, scraped knees bandaged with love, the typical tapestry of a kid growing up in a normal household. Then, the idyllic scene abruptly changed when I turned 12. Everything I thought I knew shattered into a million jagged pieces. I remember that morning like it was etched into my bones. I stood in the doorway of my room, a knot of confusion and burgeoning fear twisting in my stomach. No explanation, no goodbye hug, nothing. Just the hollow, final sound of the front door clicking shut and the rumble of his car igniting in the driveway. I raced to the window, my heart hammering against my ribs, and watched the silver Honda disappear down our street, swallowing my father whole. But he didn't just disappear, he vanished, leaving a gaping hole in my world. Why did Dad leave? I asked Mom, my voice trembling, desperately hoping she could piece together the senseless fragments for me. She slammed her coffee mug down on the counter with such force that I jumped, the ceramic jarring me further. Because he's a selfish, terrible person, Sheila. He abandoned his own child, and he won't even pay child support. That's the kind of man your father is. I didn't even fully grasp what child support meant back then, but the sheer venom laced in Mom's voice chilled me to the core. I had never seen her like this before, her face contorted by a rage I couldn't comprehend. When I tried to press her for more answers, she cut me off with a sharpness that stung. Just forget about him, Sheila. He doesn't deserve our tears. At first, I couldn't stop the relentless tide of thoughts about Dad. I lay awake at night, a prisoner of my own, wondering if I had done something wrong, if I wasn't good enough. I kept half expecting him to call, to show up at my school, to rewind the tape and make things right. As weeks bled into agonizing months, Mom's decree began to take hold. I threw myself into school, my studies became a refuge, my hobbies a distraction. I tried to be the perfect daughter, the balm to soothe Mom's visible pain. She seemed so utterly broken after Dad left, and I desperately wanted to make her happy again. It became just the two of us, a fragile little island adrift in a sea of uncertainty. We had pizza and movie nights on Fridays, a ritual attempt to normalize a life that was fundamentally and irrevocably altered. About 2 years after Dad left, Mom started dating again. Steve seemed nice enough at first, projecting an aura of harmless charm. He took us both out to dinner, even feigned interest in my schoolwork. But, looking back now, the red flags were there all along, flapping in the breeze like sinister warnings. Your mom tells me you've been staying out late with your friends, Steve said one evening, his tone deceptively casual. But there was something cold and calculating in his eyes that made me deeply uncomfortable. Just until 6, I stammered. Mom said it was okay. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes, the gesture feeling more like a threat. Well, things are going to be a little different around here from now on. A 14-year-old girl needs structure. I remember looking at Mom, pleading with her, expecting her to say something, to stand up for me, to protect me. But she just smiled adoringly at Steve and squeezed his hand. That's when the first tendrils of dread wrapped themselves around my heart, constricting the joy from my young life. My entire life changed irrevocably after Mom and Steve got married. First, it was the relentless tightening of the screws, a strict curfew clamped down on my already limited freedom. I had to be home by 5 o'clock p.m. Sharp, no exceptions. If I missed even one item on the ever-expanding chore list, there would be hell to pay. But I have volleyball practice after school on Thursdays. I protested when he demanded I clean the entire kitchen spotless by 6 o'clock p.m. every day. Then you'll have to quit volleyball, Steve said flatly, his voice devoid of any empathy. Steve's right, honey, Mom would chime in, her voice mirroring his. We need to teach you discipline, or you'll end up like your father. That phrase became her go-to weapon, a cruel barb she used to silence my complaints and guilt me into submission. Or you'll end up like your father. It stung every time, a constant reminder of my perceived flaws and failures, making me feel guilty for even questioning Steve's increasingly unreasonable rules. The rules kept piling up, suffocating me. I wasn't allowed to use my phone after 8 o'clock p.m. My homework had to be done at the kitchen table under Steve's watchful, judgmental gaze. I needed permission to hang out with friends, my every move scrutinized and controlled. Even my clothes became an issue, the target of Steve's sanctimonious judgments. One day, I came home 10 minutes late because my biology teacher wanted to discuss my project after class. Steve was waiting at the door, his face a mask of red-faced fury. "Where were you, mister?" Peterson needed to talk about no excuses. He barked, cutting me off. "You're grounded for 2 weeks. Hand over your phone." "But that's not fair. I was talking to a teacher." He just held out his hand, his eyes burning with icy anger. "Want to make it 4?" Mom watched the entire exchange from the kitchen doorway, her expression unreadable, her silence a deafening betrayal. Later, when I tried to explain to her what had happened, to plead for her understanding, she just sighed. "Sheila, you need to respect Steve. He's trying to provide you with structure, something your father never did." Things got even more complicated, the vice grip on my life tightening further when Mom announced she was pregnant. I tried to be happy for them, to embrace the illusion of a perfect family, but a cold, hard knot of dread twisted in my gut, a silent premonition that things were about to get exponentially worse. My half-brother, Tommy, was born when I was 15 and a half, and almost immediately, I was relegated to the role of unpaid babysitter, a glorified servant in my own home. "You need to watch Tommy while we go out," Steve would bark, his words leaving no room for argument. "But I have a history test tomorrow," I would protest, my voice barely a whisper. "Family comes first," Steve would interrupt, his eyes glittering with cold satisfaction. "The least you can do is help out." When Tommy cried at night, I was the one who had to drag myself out of bed, even on school nights, to check on him, to soothe him, to sacrifice my own sleep and sanity. "He's your brother," Mom would say when I dared to complain about being exhausted, her voice laced with a subtle accusation. "And since your father doesn't pay alimony, you need to contribute to this household somehow." By the time I turned 16, I was sick of hearing about how much of a financial burden I was, a constant reminder of the supposed sacrifices they were making for me. It was never about love or support, always about the money they had to spend on me, the weight of my existence pressing down on them. So, I decided to do something about it. There was this small cafe near our house, the Morning Brew, that was always looking for help. I walked in one afternoon after school, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and desperation, and talked to the manager. She must have seen something in my eyes, some flicker of determination, because she hired me on the spot. The pay wasn't great, minimum wage plus whatever tips I could scrape together, but it was something. I worked from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. on weekdays and longer shifts on weekends, pouring coffee and clearing tables to earn my own way. The next 2 years were brutal, a grueling marathon of exhaustion and sacrifice. I'd wake up at 6 o'clock a.m. to take care of Tommy, go to school, work at the cafe, come home to more chores and Tommy duty, then try to squeeze in homework somewhere in between, my mind and body perpetually running on fumes. My grades started slipping, the academic terrain becoming treacherous as my life turned into a never-ending to-do list. There just weren't enough hours in the day. When graduation came around, I was devastated to learn I didn't have enough points for a scholarship, the door to my dreams slamming shut with a deafening finality. I remember sitting at our kitchen table, the rejection letter clutched in my trembling hand, feeling the weight of my shattered hopes crushing me. "Maybe we can figure something out together," I pleaded, my voice cracking with desperation. "I could work more hours, and if you could help with just part of it." Mom cut me off, her voice cold and dismissive. "Actually, you should have thought about that before letting your grades drop." Steve chimed in, his voice smug and condescending. "We don't have money for your college. If you had studied harder instead of hanging out with your work friends all the time, maybe things would be different." The conversation was over before it began. My dreams deferred, lost in the harsh reality of our cramped kitchen. I ended up taking an entry-level position at Wilson Trading Company, a soul-crushing job in a windowless office. The hours were long, the work was tedious, and my supervisor, Mr. Peters, was a stickler for rules and procedures. But it was a real job, with a real paycheck, a lifeline in the turbulency of my life. Then came the bombshell, the next blow in a seemingly endless stream of them. After my third paycheck, Steve called a family meeting, his voice laced with an ominous seriousness. He announced, with a chilling lack of empathy, "It's time you started paying rent." I stared at him in disbelief, my mind reeling from the sheer audacity of his demand. "But I already give Mom money for groceries," I protested, my voice trembling with indignation. "That's for food," Mom jumped in, her tone firm and unyielding. "This would be for your room, utilities, everything else." They had it all calculated, a precise, merciless number that would eat up almost half of my monthly salary, leaving me with barely enough to survive. I wanted to argue, to scream, to point out how fundamentally unfair it was, but what choice did I have? The next 2 years felt like being trapped in quicksand. Every month I was handing over a chunk of my salary, watching my dreams of independence slowly sink beneath the weight of their demands. But I kept my head down, worked hard, and tried to stay afloat. Mr. Peters eventually noticed my dedication, my unwavering work ethic, and when a supervisor position opened up, he recommended me for it. The raise that came with the promotion wasn't huge, but it was enough. Enough to finally see a glimmer of hope, enough to finally get out from under their suffocating control. I found a small one-bedroom apartment across town, a tiny haven to call my own. It wasn't much, but it was mine. "Make sure you leave your key," Mom said, her voice betraying a hint of entitlement. Living on my own wasn't easy. The apartment was small and desperately needed repairs I couldn't afford, but at least it was mine, a space free of Steve's controlling gaze and Mom's tacit approval of his behavior. Still, after rent, utilities, and basic necessities, there was barely anything left to save. I'd watch my coworkers with college degrees moving up the corporate ladder while I stayed stuck in the same position, my potential stifled by my lack of education. My boss had even told me directly, "Sheila, you're one of our best workers, but without a degree, there's only so far you can go here." College remained this distant, almost unattainable dream, shimmering just beyond my grasp. I'd sometimes browse university websites during my lunch break, calculating tuition costs, imagining a different path, and always coming up short. Thwarted by my less than stellar high school grades and the impossibility of achieving full-time student status while working full-time to stay afloat. Mom and Steve rarely called, their lives seemingly consumed by Tommy's soccer games, school plays, and the endless demands of suburban family life. I usually made up excuses, politely declining their infrequent invitations, a silent agreement to maintain a comfortable distance. Then came that night, the night the carefully constructed facade of my life began to crumble. I was heating up leftover Chinese food in my tiny apartment, the microwave humming a dull tune, when someone knocked on my door. When I looked through the peephole, my heart stopped, the blood draining from my face. There he was, my father. "Sheila," his voice was exactly as I remembered it, a ghostly echo from a distant past. "Please, can we talk?" My first instinct was to slam the door in his face, to shut him out, to protect myself from the pain and confusion he represented. How dare he show up after 10 years of deafening silence, after abandoning me to a life I hadn't chosen? But something in his gaunt appearance, the weariness etched into his face, made me pause, made me hesitate. "What do you want?" I said, keeping the door chain firmly in place, my voice a brittle shield. "That's all I ask." He sat at my small kitchen table, his hands shaking slightly as he declined my automatic offer of coffee, a small gesture that spoke volumes about the chasm between the confident man from my childhood memories and the fragile figure before me. "I need to tell you why I left," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, laden with a weight of guilt and remorse. "I'm not your biological father." The words hit me like a physical blow, a sucker punch that knocked the wind out of me. I sat down hard in the chair opposite him, my legs suddenly weak and unsteady. The truth, long buried, was clawing its way to the surface, threatening to unravel everything I believed about myself. "Your mother had been acting strange, protective of her phone, secretive. I found Jessie did a DNA test. When I confronted her, she confessed to having an affair." My head was spinning, the room tilting precariously. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself, desperately trying to process the enormity of what he was saying. "She begged me to forgive her," he went on, his voice thick with emotion, "but I couldn't stay. Every time I looked at you, it wasn't fair to you. You were innocent in all this, but I couldn't handle it. I couldn't live with the lie." A bitter laugh escaped my lips, the sound filled with disbelief and simmering anger. "But I always paid the alimony," he said, his voice pleading, as if desperately seeking redemption. "I couldn't be there for you, but I made sure you were taken care of financially." "What do you mean you paid alimony?" I asked, my voice shaking, my mind racing to reconcile his words with the narrative I had been fed for the past 10 years. "Mom always said you never sent a penny." "Dad, or I guess not really." My dad reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope, its contents promising a revelation. "Every month, without fail," he said quietly, his eyes filled with a profound sadness. "I set up automatic payments the day I left." I stared at the papers, my hands trembling as I shuffled through the documents. Each statement showed the same thing. Regular monthly payments, all clearly labeled child support, Sheila. Years of payments, tens of thousands of dollars that I had never seen, never benefited from, never even knew existed. I felt sick, betrayed, robbed of a financial security that was rightfully mine. All those years of being told I was a burden, of working at the cafe while trying to study, of paying rent to my own mother while she had been receiving his support. It was all a lie, a cruel and elaborate charade. "Why are you here now?" I asked, pushing the statements away, my voice barely a whisper. "After all this time, why?" He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, suddenly looking even more frail, even more vulnerable. "I have some news, Sheila," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "Two pieces. First, I can't have children, Sheila. I have cancer. The doctors give me 2 years, maybe less." I sat there, stunned into silence, the weight of his revelation crushing me. This man, who I had spent years hating, resenting, was sitting at my kitchen table, telling me he was dying, his life ebbing away. After I left, I threw myself into work, he continued, his voice regaining a sliver of strength. Made some smart investments. I done well for myself, very well. But I have no family, no children of my own. And despite everything, despite not being your biological father, I've never stopped thinking of you as my daughter. What are you saying? I asked, my voice trembling, desperately trying to grasp the meaning behind his words. I want to make you my heir, Sheila. Everything I have, the house, the investment properties, I want it all to go to you. The room started spinning, the air growing thick and heavy. I gripped the edge of the table, struggling to stay grounded, to maintain some semblance of control. The man I thought had abandoned me had been supporting me all along, albeit unknowingly, and now he was dying, wanting to leave me his fortune, a fortune I never knew existed. I need time to think about this, I managed to say, my voice barely audible. He nodded, his eyes filled with understanding and a quiet desperation. Of course, here's my card. Call me when you're ready to talk. Before he left, he turned back to me, his face etched with regret. For what it's worth, Sheila, I'm sorry. Your mother made her choices, but I'm sorry for leaving you. I should have found a way to tell you the truth, sooner. I should have done better. I should have found a way to tell you about how I felt, and the money. I barely slept that night, my mind a whirlwind of emotions, struggling to reconcile the past with the present. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I drove to Mom and Steve's, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Tommy was at school, and Steve's car wasn't in the driveway perfect. Mom answered the door in her gardening clothes, her expression, a mixture of surprise and apprehension. Sheila, what are you doing here? We need to talk, I said, walking past her into the house, my voice firm and resolute. The living room looked exactly the same, Tommy's toys scattered everywhere, his school photos dominating the walls, a carefully curated image of domestic bliss. Dad came to see me yesterday, I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. Mom froze halfway to the couch, her face paling. Oh, her expression was guarded and wary. Yes, a very interesting conversation. He wants to make me his heir, apparently. Mom's face turned a shade of crimson. After abandoning you, after refusing to pay a cent in child support. And you're just going to forgive him because he's got money now. I couldn't help it. I started laughing, a hollow, bitter sound. That's funny, Mom. Because he showed me his bank statements. Every single month for 6 years, $2,000 in child support payments. Where did all that money go, Mom? Because it sure didn't go to me. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and shaken. Sheila, you don't understand. Oh, I think I understand perfectly, I interrupted, my voice rising with righteous anger. And that's not even the best part. He also told me why he really left. About the DNA test, about your affair. Mom sank onto the couch, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with fear. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You cheated on him, got pregnant with me, and then lied about it for years. Then, when he found out and left, you lied some more. You took his money meant for me, and used it for yourself and your new family. I needed that money, Mom suddenly burst out, her voice cracking with desperation. Do you know how hard it was being a single mother? Don't you dare try to justify this, I retorted, my voice filled with contempt. You made me work through high school, you made me pay rent, all the while you were being given money to help raise me. Mom's shock transformed into anger, her face contorting with fury. I raised you, I took care of you. And now you're going to side with him because he's dangling his money in front of you. Side with him, I scoffed. He might not be my biological father, but at least he was honest with me, which is more than I can say for you. She stood up, her face a mask of rage. If you accept his money, we're done. Do you understand me? You'll no longer be welcome in this family. I looked around the room, at Tommy's toys, at the carefully arranged family photos, the carefully constructed image of a life that wasn't mine. That's rich, Mom. You made it clear years ago that I wasn't part of this family. The only difference now is that I finally understand why. I walked out of the house, letting the door slam shut behind me, the sound echoing the finality of my decision. Mom didn't try to stop me, her silence a deafening confirmation of her true feelings. I was at work when my phone started blowing up with notifications. Aunt Carol had texted, "Have you seen your mother's Facebook post?" I waited until my lunch break to look, bracing myself for the inevitable onslaught of judgment and misunderstanding. There it was, a long, carefully crafted paragraph about her ungrateful daughter who had abandoned her loving family for a deadbeat dad's money. Mom had really outdone herself this time, painting herself as the sacrificing single mother and me as the greedy, heartless child. The comments poured in, fueling her narrative. I can't believe Sheila would do this to you after everything you've done for her. She always was a difficult child. Money changes people. My relatives, people I had grown up with, were publicly condemning me based on a one-sided, fabricated story. My hand shook as I started typing my response, the anger and hurt bubbling to the surface. Since Mom wants to air our family drama on Facebook, let's tell the whole story, I wrote, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Let's talk about how she cheated on Dad and lied about me being his daughter. Let's talk about the DNA test that made him leave. Let's talk about the child support money he sent every month for years that I never saw. Where did all that money go, Mom? I attached photos of the bank statements, the irrefutable evidence of her deception, and hit post, unleashing the truth into the digital world. The response was immediate, a firestorm of shock, disbelief, and outrage. Is this true, Sarah? What's going on? That's $144,000. My phone kept ringing with calls from relatives, but I ignored them, letting them simmer in their own confusion and discomfort. We met for dinner that weekend, Dad and I, the air thick with unspoken emotions, our relationship a fragile seedling struggling to take root in the scorched earth of the past. It was awkward at first, 10 years a long time to bridge, a decade of lost moments and unspoken words. But somehow, despite the distance, despite the pain, it felt right, as if a missing piece of the puzzle had finally clicked into place. He told me stories about his business ventures, his successes and failures, and I told him about my job, my struggles, my dreams. When I mentioned my long-dormant dream of going to college, his eyes lit up, a spark of renewed hope igniting within him. Let me help, he said, his voice filled with sincerity. It's the least I can do after all these years. I enrolled in evening management classes at the local university, my mind buzzing with excitement and a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time in years, I felt like my life was moving forward instead of standing still, the future stretching before me filled with possibilities. Dad and I started having weekly dinners, a ritual of connection and reconciliation. Sometimes we talked about the past, the unspoken hurts and regrets. Other times, we talked about the future, my schoolwork, his investments, even the corny romantic comedies we both secretly enjoyed. He wasn't my biological father, but he was becoming something just as important. A mentor, a friend, a source of unwavering support. Mom tried calling a few times after I exposed her, her voice pleading and desperate, but I let it go to voicemail, unable to face her justifications, her lies. Steve sent a text message accusing me of tearing the family apart, of being a selfish, ungrateful brat. I blocked his number, severing the last thread of connection to that toxic part of my life. Tommy asked me at the grocery store why I didn't come to his games anymore, his innocent question piercing my heart with guilt. That one hurt, a reminder of the collateral damage of my choices, but I just wasn't ready to deal with any of them, to navigate the complicated web of emotions and resentments that surrounded them. Those 4 years with Dad were a gift I never expected to have, a stolen moment of grace amidst the chaos of my life. The doctors had given him 2 years at most, a grim prognosis that hung over us like a sword of Damocles. I'm not going anywhere until I see you graduate, he'd say, his voice filled with determination, defying the odds, clinging to life with a tenacity that both inspired and broke my heart. And somehow, against all odds, he made it happen. We made the most of our time together, squeezing every drop of joy from the moments we shared. Between my evening classes and his treatments, we'd meet for dinner at least twice a week, sharing stories, laughter, and the quiet comfort of companionship. He told me stories about his life, his triumphs and failures, his business ventures, and even shared old photos from when I was little, his eyes shining with a love that transcended blood. Sometimes we just sit in comfortable silence, content to be in each other's presence, the unspoken bond between us growing stronger with each passing day. You know, he said one evening, his voice soft and filled with emotion, even after I found out you weren't biologically mine, I never stopped loving you as my daughter. I remember squeezing his hand, unable to speak through the tears that streamed down my face, the weight of his love a balm to my wounded soul. He came to all my college presentations, beaming with pride as I presented my ideas, his presence a constant source of encouragement. The last few months were hard, the cancer spreading relentlessly, confining him to the hospital more often than not. I took time off work to be there with him, spending my days at his bedside, studying for my finals in the uncomfortable hospital chair, his presence a silent motivation. You don't have to stay, he'd say, his voice weak, his eyes filled with concern. Try and make me leave, I'd answer, forcing a smile, determined to be there for him until the very end. He was there for my graduation, his greatest wish fulfilled, though we had to watch the ceremony via video call from his hospital room, his body too frail to attend in person. I brought my diploma to him right after the ceremony, still wearing my cap and gown, my heart overflowing with gratitude and a bittersweet sense of accomplishment. His smile was weak but radiant, his eyes filled with a profound sense of peace. I always knew you could do it, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath, his passing peaceful, his legacy secure. I told him about my new job offer, a prestigious position at a top firm, and how I was going to use everything he taught me, how I was going to make him proud, even in death. The inheritance was substantial, far beyond anything I could have imagined. A beautiful house in the suburbs, several investment properties, enough money to secure my future and the futures of generations to come. I moved into one of the apartments, the space already feeling like home. The rental income more than covers my expenses, allowing me to live comfortably and without financial stress, a freedom I had never known before. But I kept my job anyway, working hard and building my career. My efforts a tribute to the values he instilled in me, a testament to his unwavering belief in my potential. Dad taught me the value of building something for myself, the importance of hard work, dedication, and financial independence. Some of my relatives still try to play peacemaker, suggesting family reunions or holiday gatherings with Mom, Steve, and Tommy, clinging to the hope of reconciliation. I always declined politely, my voice firm but gentle, my decision unwavering. I've made my peace with the past, but that doesn't mean I need to revisit it, to reopen old wounds and relive past hurts. They understand, or at least they pretend to, accepting my boundaries with a grudging respect. Aunt Carol even apologized for believing Mom's Facebook post without hearing my side, admitting she had been swayed by her emotional appeal. Uncle Jim admitted he had suspicions about the child support money for years, but never said anything, a silent complicity that spoke volumes about the dynamics of our family. Sometimes I drive past my old house and see Tommy playing in the yard. Mom still lives there with her perfect little family, posting perfect family photos on Facebook, perpetuating the illusion of a life untouched by the truth. I don't feel angry anymore when I see them. I don't feel much of anything, really, just a sense of detachment, as if observing a scene from a movie, a story that no longer involves me. Dad taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about love, truth, and choosing to be there for someone even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient, even when it means sacrificing your own comfort and happiness. He chose to be my father twice. First when he married Mom, accepting me as his own, and again when he came back into my life, offering me a second chance, a chance to heal, to grow, to become the person I was always meant to be. That means more to me than any biological connection ever could, a testament to the power of love and the enduring bonds that can be forged even in the face of adversity. So, Reddit, after hearing my story, I'm left wondering if I made the right decisions. Did I handle things correctly with my mom and Steve? Was I too harsh or too forgiving? Should I have tried harder to mend fences with Tommy, or was it right to prioritize my own well-being? How would you have handled this complex family drama? What would you have done if you were in my shoes, facing the lies, betrayals, and unexpected opportunities that fate threw my way? I'm genuinely interested in your perspectives, your insights, and your honest opinions. Share your thoughts, let me know if you think I made the right choices, or if there are things I should have done differently. I'm open to hearing it all.